Three. Average Joe Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, episode 23, Epic Roll BJJ founder, Matt Wahlstrom. Matt Wahlstrom has been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 16 years and is a brown belt and soon to be black belt under Tom DeBlass. Matt is a full-time real estate agent and also flips homes for a living. Matt is the owner of several jiu-jitsu related businesses, including Epic Roll BJJ and the One Bottle Company. Matt has competed in off-road races like the Baja 500 and the Vegas-to-Reno, which is a 1,000-mile 3-day race. Matt's been married for 17 years and is the father of 2 boys. Matt also plays guitar and drums and has played in bands most of his life. Matt is an entrepreneur who wants to inspire other entrepreneurs to go out and accomplish big goals in their lives. Matt, thanks for coming on the podcast today and speaking with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's a great pleasure to be here.
It was my pleasure. So you were born and raised in Simi Valley, California?
That's right. Yeah.
And
it's about like 30 minutes from Malibu Beach.
Nice. That
was not spoiled
nice.
At all.
No. How long did you live there? When did you leave?
We moved from there to Chandler, Arizona for a very short period of time, like 2 years, right before high school for me. And so it was a big change going from like, Southern California to I came to Virginia and there's like cows in the yard. And I'm going, What is going on here?
Right.
A little bit of a culture shock. So so it was right before high school. We ended up moving here and been here ever since.
Well, that must have been sort of rough. I mean, like in my experience, like, how I mentioned you were married for 17 years and you have 2 boys. I've been married for 20 years. I have 2 daughters. And, where we live, it's real expensive. So there's been discussions of moving and my oldest is 18 now. My youngest just turned 13 yesterday. And so, they're all pretty settled with their family, with their friends and their social groups. And they're both like, putting their feet in the sand, drilling their heels in about leaving anywhere right now. So how did that affect you at that point in your life? Is that a big shock as far as social groups and so forth?
We moved quite a bit, just around, and I guess maybe that's a relative, but I would say, I think we lived in 3 different places in California, then Arizona, and then here. So I was kind of used to moving a little bit. It wasn't, like you always have to make new friends and meet new people. And that was, I think later on in life now kind of recognized as maybe a value for me, because it helps you kind of interact with people and just sort of develop that grit to kind of go into an uncomfortable situation and handle it and move forward and make the best of it. So, retrospectively now, the people that I've met, the friends and family, it was sort of a universal plan, I think, to be here and things kind of work out the way that they are. And we were on sort of our plan. We had this running joke of our 5-year plan to get back to California. It was always back to California, Couldn't pay me to live there now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like my home state. It pains me to say it, but it's just, there's a multitude of reasons, obviously. But so I think Florida's calling our name. I think that's, my business partner for the bottle. One of my best friends is down there. There's a lot of great jiu-jitsu. So I think that will be our happy medium, a place where we can get the weather with actually warmer beaches, right? Warmer water, and still have that lifestyle, that beach, the water, that's like cleansing to my soul. That's all I need. If I could just sit every day at the beach, water, see water from my house, that's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, the things I'm thinking about when you were saying all that is it probably, like you said, it was a good thing. It made you have to learn social skills that you could like walk in really anywhere and be able to interact with other people, not be shy or, introverted, et cetera, which, thinking that's a pretty good thing for my kids to have, but too bad it didn't happen. But they're well adjusted. They don't need it. But the other thing I was thinking is that it's like, and like the thing about California, it's true. Like my brother-in-law, he moved out west to like Kansas and then now in Nebraska and stuff. He wouldn't come back here. He doesn't want to come back for anything. And I think a lot of it's the cost. I mean, I've heard that people say, they leave California. They're not coming back. You just can't afford it. And, the difference in cost is ridiculous, but I've always thought I've been toying with the idea of moving to San Diego in the next 5 years or so.
That's a great place. I love San Diego.
Yeah.
I mean, San Diego is amazing. Yeah. It's phenomenal. Yeah. There's so many great parts. I think but when you settle into being there, as you said, the taxes and all the expenses that come with California and just I don't know. I'm like, am I gonna get stuck on the 405 during an earthquake? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I go back and forth. I go back and forth between San Diego because I just love the area and there's a ton of jiu-jitsu down there. And that all sounds great to me. And I think my oldest might end up there. But the other part of me is like, oh, maybe Arizona would be better, just be cheaper. And I don't know. So I'll have to figure out what's going to happen.
We got options on the table.
Yeah, yeah. So how old were you when you first got into martial arts? How did you get into it?
I started Taekwondo, I think like every American kid, right? At a young age. And I remember my instructor was Korean, Japanese. I don't know what he was. He didn't speak English. I'll tell you that I did know, because we had to learn all of our katas, everything. We were like, went in there, it was a culture shock, but I didn't get out of that. It was just one of those kind of things that you do. Like I was kind of just going through the motions. And later on in life, I got married. I was about 25 years old at the time. And I think that was when the Ultimate Fighter reality show kind of was getting popular and out there. And I had one of my instructors was Kenny Florian's cousin, Salvatore. So we had a school together for a while. And so there was a lot, like kind of little ties in with that. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool. And I knew a little bit about jiu-jitsu from seeing the UFC. So at that time I thought, well, I want to get into martial arts mostly so that I could learn how to defend myself and I could feel comfortable and confident in that. I'd never really had, gotten fights growing up and had any issues. So I was kind of just got along with everybody. And I thought, well, I'd like to see, I'd like to train myself and see what this is about. And I remember Googling at the time, jiu-jitsu, and I was doing graphic design, web design. And the company that the website that popped up had like the best website of the other jiu-jitsu schools that I Googled. And so to me, that was the criteria for just picking the school. I thought, well, they have a good website. They must care about their school and their business. And showed up, and within, I'd say the first couple weeks, I just was absolutely hooked. And it was a very different time because we're very nice to people. The way that we integrate students now, it's a completely different environment than I was brought up in through jiu-jitsu. It was very cutthroat. It was very old school. And, like if you don't make it, you don't make it, no one really cares. It's like,
what year was that? What year was that?
It was 2005.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. That's
shifted a lot.
It has. I would imagine it has. I mean, I wasn't doing it back then, but I would imagine that. Yeah, I've heard that from a few people. But you actually started doing MMA at one point too, didn't you? You started.
I did. So I've trained jiu-jitsu for a year, and at that point, I think from training with Kenny and a couple of different people, I saw MMA, and I was like, well, maybe, probably partially because you got this testosterone charged 25, 26-year-old, that. But again, going back to this notion, I never got in fights. So I kind of felt after a year of jiu-jitsu, I was like, well, I want to get into MMA and see how I can fare against another fighter, not just some drunk idiot at a bar. And my instructor said, do jiu-jitsu for another year. So you had 2 years under your belt, and then you can fight. I was like, okay. So I ended up getting my blue belt the day before. I believe it was the day before my first MMA fight. And I had 4 fights. I had a 3-1 record. I lost 1 fight to a state champion wrestler on a decision. And that guy and I were like still friends on Facebook and still talk. And so yeah, it was cool. It was one of those things that I did. Maybe not a bucket list item, but something that I just felt like it takes a lot to get into a ring with another person and put your ego on the line like that. It really does. And so for me, it was sort of a challenge that I wanted to take on and try, but I quickly realized that I wasn't going to do this for a profession. I wasn't doing it initially even to transition to a profession. It was just something I felt compelled to do. And once I had done it, I realized that I was so in love with jiu-jitsu that I could continue doing that. And that was a little bit less hazardous to my health, especially since if I got hurt or whatever, it can affect my job. And so I remember talking to Kenny Florian early on, back when he was getting ready to fight Roger Huerta, and he had an exit strategy all along. He told me how hard it was, kind of going through the sport. He had his electricity turned off from not being able to pay bills at one point, and he, it's a rough life for fighters. And he's obviously a very intelligent guy and very well spoken. And I think his transition to commentating was great. But that was kind of his plan, was to transition out, because I think he knew, as a lot of other fighters do, that it's a rough road. It's a lot. It's very taxing on your body, and you kind of have to think about where that's going to go and what your strategy is going to be going out. So it was very fun to do. I enjoyed the process a lot, and it pushed me, and I'm glad that I did it, for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely respect that. I mean, I didn't start jiu-jitsu till I think it was 41 or 42. And, but my first coach was still a competitive pro MMA fighter at the time. And, he was doing a couple fights, and we talk about it. And I was thinking, man, if I was in my early 20s and stuff when I started this, I probably would have done a fight or two just to get the experience like you did, and it did interest me. But I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm not doing that at 42,
Yeah.
But yeah, I know, I respect that. Did you train with somebody else for like striking work, or did you work with the same person you would jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so I had a striking coach. I had a wrestling coach. I had an MMA school that was comprised of one of our black belts. He branched out and opened up his own school. And so I had strength and conditioning coach. So it was a lot of coaches and a lot of training for amateur fights, right? For just like someone who's not getting paid to do it. And it was a lot, especially being a new dad. That was very tough to balance all that training. How do you justify spending that much time away from your family when you're, there's no monetary reward? I mean, there's certain, it's okay to have hobbies. It's great. Right. But at a certain point, you have to prioritize your time and your interests. And my wife was very, accommodating for many years. It took a while of her getting used to jiu-jitsu being so heavily integrated into my life, but it came to a point where she recognized, she's like, when you don't train, you suck. Like, not like completely, but just like you need to, that's like obviously a thing in your life that you need to do. And you're a happier, better person when you do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can relate to that. My wife puts up with a lot of that for me too. And especially the whole thing we were saying about the preparation. Like I when I was 36, I did a bodybuilding contest, and that was like, 6 months of just absolute nothing but that and work. And yeah, I could tell it was not taking a toll on her, but I could tell she was like really exercising a lot of patience with me, like I was not fun to be around, and she was letting me get this, get this thing off my bucket list, I guess, and just do it. But yeah, it was all I did was train and eat and work and sleep, and that was it. But yeah,
it's rough. I did one show as well. The Monica Brandt, she used to have a show here at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. And I did one show too, and I trained a whole year for it. And all my friends are going out, and I'm, eating and sleeping and training and
cardio, and
great. It was like, I did it, but I would never want to do it again. I would just not at all. And it was an untested show. So when I got out there, and the guy who was just sitting in his hoodie, not warming up or doing anything, unzips his hoodie right before we go on, and looks like Kevin Levrone, and it's just this jacked guy. I was like, okay, that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, that's what I'm with me too. I mean, I was natural, and I did an NPC show. It wasn't drug tested. And it is, but I looked at it like, the before and after result was my win. I was like, it was such a big difference. There's actually a picture of me from the day before the contest on my Instagram, and that's where I got out of it. I learned that I could do it. I proved it to myself that I could take myself from being like looking like a power lifter, looking like a bodybuilder, and I did it. So, it's all good.
It's the discipline, it's that discipline of, it's such a fundamental aspect of so many things in life, and what you can and can't accomplish. And usually when people fall short, it's because, excuse me, they didn't have the discipline to stick with it.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a discipline. It's like, if you think about it, you probably have done a lot of things in your life where you exercise that discipline. I know I have, and it's just
absolutely,
it is necessary to be successful. That's all there is to it. So you are the owner and creator. We've always said that as we've already established, of Epic Roll BJJ, and you manage the entire business and you create all the designs yourself, which is, I think, is impressive because some of them are, or the ones I saw are really, what's the word for it? They're very creative and they're very unique, and they're, like the neon belly with the neon.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's clever.
I appreciate it.
And I went through the Instagram and the website. You have a ton of merchandise, and I'm just going to list off some stuff for people listening. I mean, you sell rash guards, shorts, and I believe you have shorts that don't have Velcro. Like Chewy's mentioned many times. I actually like those. I prefer those myself. You have Ghees, you have nice rank belts, you have t-shirts, you have hoodies, pullover and zip ups. You have caps, visors, beanies, coffee mugs, everything. Yeah. So all kinds of great stuff. So what makes, but if you can explain it, what makes your Epic Roll BJJ products unique as far as your rash guard, shorts, Ghees, etc.?
When I started Epic Roll, part of the motivation was because I saw that there appeared to be a void in lifestyle jiu-jitsu gear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just things that were not so aggressive, things that were not so in your face.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of the Choke Republic shirts and, some of the ones out there, but I just felt like the Starbucks jiu-jitsu logo or the Coca-Cola jiu-jitsu, like all that stuff was just kind of played out, and the tap, snap and nap stuff, it was just so, it was old. And so I kind of determined, why my background was in design and this, I selfishly, I was like, well, maybe I can come up with some of my own designs, right? Come up with this brand. And it initially was actually going to be, I bought the URL, created the name, and then I was going to create jiu-jitsu videos online just to have beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and didn't end up doing that, and sort of, transitioned to really just apparel. And it started off as being a few just logoed shirts, very basic, and then another design, and then people were, hey, do you make rash guards? Do you make Ghees? Do you make this or that? And it sort of just evolved to going from, what it was to, even what it is now, which has been great. It's been great. It's definitely been a fun evolution. And I think I really wanted the brand to be something that worked for everybody. Sort of pulled in the whole community together. It wasn't so aggressive that it had to be strictly, masculine or feminine. It was sort of appealed to everybody, men, women, children.
Right.
So that was the goal, was to create a lifestyle brand that appealed to everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I appreciate the point you made about like the messages that were being put across and making something different. I mean, I think that's part of, I guess, making jiu-jitsu more available for everybody, is if you don't make it like you're going to walk into this place and you're going to get your ass kicked and, and smashed up by a bunch of gorillas, So,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So you're also getting ready to launch a new fitness bottle product that you invented 14 years ago, named the One Bottle. And there's an Instagram page for this, which is at the One Bottle Company. And can you describe what the product offers and what makes it unique?
Sure. So I actually created this years ago when my son was first born. We bottle fed him a lot. We had to. And in that process, I remember we would carry around bottles of formula and water and everything. And then we're having to make it on the go and mix it. Parents usually get that. And I remember one time my son was crying and I'm trying to scoop this, the powder into the water, and I spill it on his head, like Dad of the Year. And it was just a nightmare. I was like, this is just a terrible process. Like this, there has to be something better. So I kind of went home and started designing this idea in my mind. How could this work? And didn't know anything about patents, about this whole process, right? Just like a kind of a dumb kid with an idea. And that took me on a 14-year journey of eventually getting 2 fully granted patents, utility patents, on the technology. And essentially what it does is it allows you to keep, if you would imagine, your water in the top half of the bottle, and then formula or powder in the bottom. As a baby bottle, it was kind of reversed. We had the water on the bottom, formula on the top. But baby bottles, that baby industry. It's a very volatile, very delicate industry. So we had developed the fitness bottle version of this early on, and was farther ahead in the development of that product. So we thought this would be a good thing to launch first with the one bottle, build the brand, build the recognition, and then transition to the baby bottle. Once we have the street credibility, we have the sales, we have all the, have worked through the kinks. You learn a lot when in your first year or two of sales with your product and customer feedback and changes you need to make. And it's a very expensive process, all of this. But now, yeah, my partner, John, who's this amazing guy who has a bunch of different companies, was able to step in. We met and partnered on this to sort of bring the idea and technology patents that I'm bringing, plus his hundreds of millions of dollars worth of, business infrastructure for his other companies, to launch it. And currently we're just fine tuning the development, because when you produce things from tooling and, not just from a 3D printer, it's very different. And the process of product development is something that can't be expedited. You can't skip past it. In fact, these are where other podcasts and other inventors and other people before me, I appreciate the stories and the journeys that they've gone through, and reading that, because it has helped me continue to move forward and not get so frustrated, because after a certain amount of time, like my life motto has been patience with everything, with jiu-jitsu, getting your black belt, with the, inventions, with any of this stuff, building companies or brands, all takes time, and patience. So James Dyson, when he did his first vacuum, he had something like 5,127 prototypes that he did of that vacuum before launching it. So, it's one of those things you have to just continue to go and go. So we're making these fine tuning adjustments to some of the components so that it works perfectly, because when you start to mass produce, obviously it's a very costly thing to go back and make changes after the fact.
Right.
So we are in the last little stages of that. And that did take longer than we had anticipated. But again, with not only the network of amazing people that we have to help us with launching this and promoting it, and the social media presence, we really want to make sure that we're putting out like the iPhone of bottles, right? So we want to make sure that we're putting out a brilliant product that works flawlessly and makes people's lives easier. And so, so as of now, our goal is to hopefully be on the market within the next couple months, pending no other surprises with our, manufacturing and production process.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean, I've never done anything like that before in my life, but I mean,
the lawyers and the partnerships and the raising money and, our tooling, just, the bottle's made of 7 components, just 7 parts. I tried to design it in a way that it would be cost effective from a manufacturing standpoint. And those 7 parts, the tooling for that was $200,000 just right off just that one part.
Wow.
That's not to mention patent maintenance fees and all attorney fees and everything that's involved. It's such a process. People like usually see the end result. They don't see the journey. They don't know how, I mean, there were so many times that I could have just stopped this. And, when I first created it, people would say, "Oh, cool, you invented something," like pat me on the back, like it's a joke, and now people are like, "I would have invested money, and are you still looking for investors? And are you doing, it's." So I had to really dig deep to kind of believe in what I created and to try and see it through. But I'm a firm believer that when you do that kind of stuff, in life, it usually pays off. So,
yeah. So the part about raising money and so forth, what would you just take the product, the idea to people you think are good investors, and you pitch it to them, and you hope that they invest in it?
Well, I had multiple offers for companies that wanted to kind of buy the rights to it. They wanted to buy the patents, that wanted to license it out so they can make the product with their line. But I was not willing to just take, whatever little side money that they thought they could throw me. I mean, I put way too much time into this. I would rather see it through, because I knew the value. Like I know, there's the only reason I have the partner that I have is because he's a very savvy businessman. He knows the value in this as well, or else he wouldn't be messing with it.
Right.
So, I got an opportunity with having John as my partner to really stay heavily involved in the development, the logo, the way the bottle looks, the colors, everything I got to design. I kind of in my mind had thought years ago that I was going to have to relinquish a lot of that over to a company that was just going to take control and go, we got this, you know, and I was able to still be very involved. And John said to me, is like, you know, who else should do that? You've been working on this for how long? It makes sense. Like you are the guy for that. So I was very lucky in a sense that I didn't have to do that. I got to really stay involved and now get to kind of see it through all the way to production. So I'm very excited to get it out. I mean, when you spend this much time on anything, obviously, you know, it's awesome when it comes to a head and you get your little wins, because there's been many losses and many downsides and many, you know, so much time, effort, and blood, sweat, and tears and everything that went into it. But to me, that's all part of the journey, and hopefully the inspiring story for people eventually down the road is, you know, that these things are possible when you just take the time to believe in what you're trying to do. You're passionate about what you're doing, and you know, and you have the perseverance and the discipline to see it all the way through. That's usually, that was what I gathered from all of the, you know, inspiring and successful people, were that they weren't necessarily the most brilliant or, you know, studious. They were just hard workers. They were willing to, they believed in what they were trying to accomplish, and they pushed forward to until they reached their goals, you know, and that was it. So I bought into that, and I thought, no matter how long this takes, no matter how much money it costs, no matter how, like, this is just something I'm fully committed to seeing through. And I think the world deserves, and it needs to be out there. And so that's where we are with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How, with the Epic Roll BJJ, I mean, how does that relate to that? I mean, how did you start that? I mean, what do you do when you have a clothing company and you're like, I want to, you know, have this particular type of clothing or product, and I want to gear it toward this particular audience or you know, customer group. But what did you just found rash guards and made up the logos and found people to print them? And was it that way, or?
So I started it as a drop shipping company. I don't know if you're familiar with drop shipping at all. So for those of you who don't know, drop shipping is essentially when you're able to have a online store where you can sell either reselling products that already are out there or white label them, right? So you can put your logo on somebody else's product, like a Next Level t-shirt or a Bell and Canvas t-shirt with your logo, and then resell it. And what that allows you to do is to offer a wider variety of products and sizes and colors, maybe variations, without holding inventory. I have over 50 shirt designs. It would be impossible to, I have some shirts where they're available in like 11 colors and 7 sizes. And, you know, so when somebody orders a Epic Roll t-shirt, my manufacturer that I use, depending on where they ordered it, whether it was overseas or where in the country, because there's different fulfillment centers that it will go to. So logistically, it makes sense. And they will print that exact shirt and design, package it, ship it, send it to the client. They take their profit, they send me mine, and that's it. Okay. That's all well and good. You do sacrifice a hefty portion of profit with doing it like this. However, I also have my own inside labels on the shirts. So that way, if somebody orders an Epic Roll shirt, they're not seeing like a Gildan tag or a Bell and Canvas tag. It's actually got Epic Roll on it. That costs money. The type of shirt I use is more expensive than just a cheap shirt. That costs money. So it definitely eats into your profit, but it allowed me to grow this brand, right? To put it out there and almost do like a test to see, are people digging this? Are they not? So that was really great. And then the challenge came when it went into, oh, do you make rash guards? That was kind of the first evolution. I was fortunate to have a connection through somebody who had already worked with this gentleman. And so it wasn't, completely ambiguous. It wasn't this random, I'm just sending money to some guy. And I've been working with the same guy ever since then. So that's been great. But logistically, it's hard. There's a reason that Origin is like the only ghee company that's made in the US, right? They bought a loom, they had Jocko money, they were able to do that. And it still creates challenges for them in terms of delivery times on products. Like that's still a thing. So until we're able to as a whole fix this issue with manufacturing overseas is just it's just unfortunately like what most companies have to do is work with companies overseas, which from a banking standpoint is annoying, from a logistics and shipping standpoint is annoying. Like if something's off in an order, talking a week and a half, 2 weeks sometimes to get a new product sent. It's not like I can just get it down the corner. So that was really challenging. And especially when you're trying to constantly develop new products and new, keep it exciting, you can be limited to what you have access to. Right. So at this point for me, I have a ton of designs. I have a ton that I haven't even launched. And lately I've been doing a lot more one-off limited edition products with like my buddy Rob from McDojo Life and Jeff Glover and Harley Flanagan with the Cro-Mags and all, these Mason Fowler and these different people that I'm helping them, use my design ability to bring to life their brands with, collaboration with Epic Roll. So it's great for me because I get the brand recognition of working with, these awesome people, and and they're depending on me to come out with, great designs to kind of represent their brand well.
Right.
And that's been very fun and has been something really exciting because it's different than just, my own stuff. It gives me a little bit more leeway in maybe what I'm designing too. So because it's for somebody else. So so that's been kind of fun. And I think that at a certain point, we'll have to figure out, how do we 10X this? How do I take this to the next level? Like doing everything myself is a lot of work. I mean, like a tremendous amount of work. It's not only just managing the social media, just the Instagram page, that the Instagram page for three different, business accounts, and trying to create this stuff and package it. And I'm at the post office all the time. And I'm not at a point where I can just hire somebody to kind of sit in here random, what I mean? Orders and everything come in at random times. It's just, it's a little bit of a different model. And there was a lot of information out there on how to do this, but I had a really big learning curve. I didn't know how to start a clothing company, I knew about branding and marketing, but the non-glorious side of running a business and a clothing company and what you have to do and trademarks and all this was a ton of work. So, but I think it's been great, and I'm extremely pleased with the growth that I've had in the past 3 years. And I think there's a lot of room for that continued growth. It seems to me that Epic Roll has been a pretty well received brand as a whole. And I think enough people have sort of interacted with it and sort of like it, that it's really motivated me to kind of continue on and try to keep giving people more cool stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I looked at the products. I think they're awesome. They're great. But I will say, I was reading when you gave me your cliff notes on your background, I was like, how does he have time to do all this stuff? I'm like, I mean, you're doing real estate, you're flipping homes, you have Epic Roll BJJ, you've got, the new bottle, you've got your family. I mean, you got jiu-jitsu. It's like, how do you have time in the day to do all that? It's like, wow, you're a beast,
man. I appreciate it. Yeah. For me, again, I feel an obligation to see these things through because I've received so much support. I'll have messages people will send to me and tell me that this is like their favorite jiu-jitsu gear and they love the design. I mean, things that are so like, they mean so much to me. They're so humbling to hear people say those things. And, because I'm just some random guy, they could spend their money with anybody else. And so when people are reaching out and saying that, I'm like, man, this is obviously something I need to continue doing for myself. And then for all the people that have been super supportive of it. And so it's a lot of work, but I love what I do, in all aspects of it. I think one of the most fulfilling things in life is to feel like you are where you're supposed to be, to feel like you are doing the things that, are fulfilling to you as a human being, and that you're good at. Just gets you up in the morning. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of effort to get to that point, because I worked a ton of terrible jobs and jobs where I was not happy and I had to have crazy commutes and, nightmares, but constantly moving forward towards the things, not chasing money, chasing your passions, because I just think that people that are out there just trying to chase a buck and just, I understand like sometimes life is tough. Sometimes you just need to make money, but that's usually a very short term, temporary solution when you're just chasing the money. You got to, you have to, we spend something like 90,000 hours of our lives working jobs on just for 9 to 5 people. So that time that you're spending doing things, if you can do it with something that you're fulfilled and you're passionate about, it's amazing. It's amazing. So while it's a ton of hard work, I look at, what I'm trying to create for my kids and for my family and for, the community. And that I think I'm fortunate enough to be able to, like, even though it's hard work and even though it takes a lot and it's super stressful, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm lucky as a gift to be able to get up and take my kids to school and have my schedule and kind of, it's like the entrepreneur, like we work 90 hours a week for ourselves. So we don't have to work 45 for somebody else.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like a great life, to tell you the truth. And and I will say that I, for one, try to support the smaller companies myself. And I hope the listeners will do as well. I mean, like one example, like there's a Ghee company called O's Clothing. And I just bought one of their Ghees last week. They're great. They're great products, but they're a smaller company, but it's like, I'd rather give them my money than give it to Fuji or somebody, some big, monopoly,
No doubt.
Yeah. And the quality's there, yeah. And I actually do have an Origin Ghee too, that you mentioned, Origin. I have one, just personally not a big fan of it, but it is what it is.
I've heard that from a few people. It's interesting, man.
Yeah.
I've got a few people that are going to start. They want me to start creating their Ghees for them because they've had a lot of challenges with Origin. I mean, there comes a point where these companies get huge and maybe they can't connect with the customers like they used to. I think one of the benefits for me at this point still is that I am able to do that. When I'm sending stuff out, rash guards, I handwrite letters to everybody, thank you letters to everybody, because whether it's a pair of shorts or rash guard or a keychain or whatever, because it does mean a lot to me, for people to, I know that they could spend their money anywhere else. And I know that they're making a choice, and it's not like my stuff is cheap, so I do appreciate that. I want to make sure people understand, my level of gratitude for their support with that as well. So, yeah.
Oh, excellent. And I mean, it may not be cheap either, but it's also not extremely expensive. It's not like it's comparable. It's competitive. Yeah. It's competitive pricing. So, I looked at that, and I mean, I'm gonna grab some stuff. I'm gonna look for some stuff and grab some.
We'll get you the bro discount.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I have a way to pay you back for that, and I'll get to that by the end of the interview.
Right.
Okay. So like we said, you're a dad of 2 boys. How old are they now?
So my son Tyler just turned 16, and my son Jet just turned 11.
Yeah, just like me, basically 5 years apart. Exactly. Yeah, 13 and 18. Yeah. So you get to do high school 2 times in a row too. It's awesome.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. He's a sophomore in high school, and he's now like, almost 5'10" and like 185 pounds.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He's just huge and full of testosterone. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He trains with us. I mean, I started both my boys at like 5 years old training jiu-jitsu, and my youngest is doing basketball now, and he'll be starting back up again. But Tyler was able to transition with us to our adult class. And so we have a large school filled with, an impressive stable of grapplers and, a ton of brown. I mean, we had an open mat a week ago. We had like 8 or 9 brown belts there that were just, when I started, if you had a brown belt in your school, oh my God, like
it's like a unicorn, right?
Absolutely. It was an impressive thing to have. So I tell everybody now that's just starting out at our school at Silverback, I'm like, you don't know how fortunate you are to have this level of a diverse group of people to train with. It's such I constantly train with the higher belts when I was coming up, because those were the people that were putting me in the worst spots, but I wasn't necessarily getting hurt, and I could learn from them. Yeah. The only reason I was rolling with white belts is because I wanted to win too. I wanted to go home with a win too every once in a while. So that was it's kind of a whole different thing now. And they're very fortunate, but yeah, it's great. He's doing really well, and he's going to get his blue belt soon.
Nice.
We're waiting until he turns 16, obviously. And he'll have his blue belt at 16. I got mine at 27.
I got mine at 43, 44.
It's crushing us.
It's crushing. It's just what it is, you know? Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's so the name of your academy is Silverback Jiu-Jitsu?
Silverback Academy in Chantilly, Virginia.
Nice.
And after 16 years of training, I will honestly say, I know it always sounds biased, but I have been around and trained a lot of places, different countries, different states. And our instructor, our Professor Sean, is a different level. His background, he was with Chris Howder, then he was with Roy Dean, then he was with Tom DeBlass.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and Tom will use Sean as his jiu-jitsu training partner when he's getting ready for tournaments or when he has his one championship fights. I mean, he's that amazing. I remember first going to the school and coming in with extensive amount of experience, and I grappled with him for the first time. And it was white belt day one. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I could do zero things against this man. Like and meanwhile, he's very attentive and very aware of surroundings and always paying attention to the students. So we'll have this joke where he's rolling with people and he's just like kind of perusing the room and coaching on the side, meanwhile, while he's just toying with you
I know that guy. His name's also Ron Kessler.
Yeah, you have one.
Yeah, he was my first coach. Love the guy. But he would do that. You'd roll with him. He's an excellent jiu-jitsu guy. I mean, he was the pro MMA fighter I mentioned earlier, and he still competes in jiu-jitsu and and takes a lot of golds. And he's a beast. But he will do that. Well, you'd be sitting there rolling with him, and you're trying whatever you can do just to pass his guard or get by. And he's like looking around the room, and he's talking to other people and coaching them, and it's just like Jesus, it's just.
You're like, what's happening here? But it gave me something to aspire to. I thought, wow, if I can come in this late in the game, you just don't expect, except with maybe like world champions, like Muhammad Ali came and trained with us, and I rolled with him, and he's like a monster. And but you just don't expect to feel that level of beginnerness again when you're so far into it. And I thought, man, like this is who I want to aspire to be. Like, I want to be like Sean. I want to learn his level of jiu-jitsu. I want to, and so super fortunate to be there, because in this area, a lot of people, depending on where you are in the country, can be very limited to the jiu-jitsu that's just there, right? It's obviously grown a ton, and there's a lot more places, but I think I've also seen a bunch of, like, I hate to call it, but like garbage jiu-jitsu, like people that are black belts where I'm like, not by our standards, you're not, like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's unfortunate when people are subjected to those, those type of places where it's like the McDojos, right? Like,
No, I totally get it. Yeah.
We were very fortunate in our area, though. I mean, this whole area, there was a lot of talent. Ryan Hall was in Arlington. You had Lloyd Irvin here. You had Leo Dalla here. You have Pedro Sauer that was here, and so there was a fair amount of good schools around here. But I would say that of all the ones I've gone to, I feel very fortunate to be at Silverback, because it is not only an amazing environment and amazing people, but just next level jiu-jitsu instruction. And Sean has such a methodical way of teaching that it was such a interesting concept, because I went through so many years of jiu-jitsu where you're just randomly learning things. Triangle choke this day, ankle lock this day, guard pass this day, no continuity, nothing connecting. Whereas we have modalities in these systems that we'll stay in, where we're working the back system for 2 months, or leg system for 3 months. So we come out of there integrally having a really deep understanding for every aspect of that position, respectively. But so to me, it's such a more effective and efficient way of learning, where things are connecting, they're making sense. One transitions to the other, do this, if this, then that kind of a process, instead of just randomly putting it together. So I think that's also definitely a component of why, I mean, I went in and like blue belts, so I was like, wow, they're good. Like these blue belts are great. The purple belts are great. Everybody's great, and I thought, well, that's definitely a recognition point for Silverback and Sean and what he's cultivating there at our school.
No, absolutely. That sounds like an excellent academy and place to train. And I agree with you. I like the idea of systems and conceptual training. I really found I really found the conceptual training is the best method for me to learn and progress the quickest. I don't like the idea of learning 1,000 million different, individual techniques. And, that seems like, it doesn't seem like the best use of my time. I feel like if I learn like even if you look at what Danaher put out, like the first set, the Enter the System, series, you got like 5 or 6 systems that all basically revolve around each other, interlock with each other, and interchange with each other, and all the concepts and the principles are all the same. And if you can learn all those systems and really master them, you got a really well-rounded system of jiu-jitsu to work off of, and it's all basic techniques. And I think that's important. I mean, I don't know, that's just my personal view and opinion of it, but like I figured out that I started this list. I call it my things to work on list, and for these holes I want to fill in my jiu-jitsu, and one of them was the front headlock, like guillotine in the headlock system. So I went and picked up his instructional. I started looking at it last night, and I started taking notes on it and diving into it. So that's what I'm going to do for a while. I'm going to focus on that,
And let me just say, with that specifically, I would give my 100% stamp of approval that that's a great system to train, because we finished that a couple months ago, and we'll see every time we're finished a system, we'll have the, in the tournaments, everybody's killing everybody with these things. And the front headlock system, that's lethal, man. So many people leave their head out. So it's if you learn a good, effective front headlock system, it's phenomenal. Really, you find that that's a very good return on investment.
Yeah, I'm
no doubt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if I can make something happen with it, because it's like I said, it's a self-realized big hole, and I don't really know very much about it. Want to learn everything I can about it, and put it together with the other stuff I do, like Kimura and triangle systems and so forth that I like to use, and back control and all that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, makes me feel even more excited after heard what you said. So
yeah, no doubt.
So do you, besides your oldest son, do any other family members do jiu-jitsu?
I finally got my brother-in-law into
Nice.
jiu-jitsu. He has been married to my sister for, I think, like 10 years now. And it took him, he just got his blue belt last year. So he's been training almost 2 years, like maybe a year and a half. And he said to me, we were together last night, and he's like, why did you keep pushing me to like do jiu-jitsu? Like, he was very grateful. He was like, I'm so grateful that you pushed me to do it, because now this has changed his life. And I was like, well, you're a competitive guy. I made some assumptions off of just knowing you and thinking this would be, something you would enjoy. And then I selfishly thought you could also take care of my sister and her family better, knowing that you have some self-defense skills. And he loves it. So he, in my family, directly in my family, he's the only other person. My cousin also is out in California and moving up to Oregon, and he just recently started as well. So I've got those two. In my head, I'm trying to create a Gracie family. I'm like, my brother-in-law, I'm like, this is our job. We got my kids, we're gonna get his kids. I was like, and we're just gonna grow this so that eventually you're gonna have tons and tons of people in jiu-jitsu in our family. That's my goal. That's
Sweet.
my goal.
It's an awesome goal. There you go. Yeah, I've always tried to get my girls to do it, and no luck.
Yeah, it's tough.
If timing had been different, like they did dance, because they were tiny when they got into it. My sister-in-law owned a studio at the time, and they were tiny when they got into it, and it's sort of like they just grew up with it. But I was sometimes, I'm like, God, I wish I had just done jiu-jitsu earlier, and I could have grabbed them at that age and just shoved them in there and made them do it. And they would know the difference, at least make them do it.
It's hard for them if they don't know. Yeah, if they don't know why they're doing it. It's hard, in my mind. I mean, I've taught so many kids, and there's some girls that I've trained that I know they'll never be victims, right? Like they're tossing boys around. It's amazing to see. And some of them have the grit to be okay with grappling and that hands-on and doing that. And others, it's a very scary and foreign feeling to be, for rolling with somebody else. And, but I think eventually it's definitely something that if females can be, especially, I think they're a lot more comfortable in female classes. Like, even though that's, you're not going to have a female attacker, probably it's going to probably be a guy, but just getting you comfortable with it and getting out there is huge to have even a basic level of jiu-jitsu understanding, a blue belt. I mean, that's why I think that for a lot of police departments and everybody that's starting to adopt this, I think it's really cool, because it's a very beneficial martial art to know, just from a practicality standpoint.
Yeah, I think the law enforcement thing is I actually have some experience in law enforcement, and I would say that the thing with law enforcement I think is great about it is that it builds the confidence that you know how to do something, you know how to take care of yourself, and so you don't freak out when you get in a bad situation. And that's the freaking out is what causes bad decisions and people get hurt or there's excessive force or whatever used. And I think that the idea of police officers training in jiu-jitsu, I think, is an excellent idea. Actually, I know locally where I am, there is a police only class. I'm not going to say the name of the academies. I'm not going to I don't know if they don't want everybody to know, but there's a police only class at this one academy pretty close to where I live. And I think it's a great idea. You got Santa Clara, there's Santa Clara and San Jose and different, officers from different departments, local areas that are training in jiu-jitsu together. And I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. No, it is. There was a situation when I was in Nashville for a while. We opened up a restaurant in downtown Nashville, and I was out with my boss at the time, and we were out on Broadway, and we saw these two guys get into a street fight, and one guy got punched and looked like he was knocked out, and he sat back up after a minute, and the guy who knocked him out went running and did like a football style punt to this guy's head.
Wow.
He didn't even know where he was, and this guy just kicked him in the head. And his head thumped against the concrete so hard. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like just the sound of that, it was terrible. I thought this guy's like dead. So I ran across the street, checking this guy's vitals, and of course, like nobody's doing anything.
Right.
And this guy starts getting all hostile, like the guy who just kicked him, like he was gonna do it again, and looked like he was about to get in a fight with some other people. And after I saw that, I'm like, that's the level of man we're talking about. Somebody that would just kick a guy who just got knocked out, who's just sitting up, and kick him in the head. You know what I mean? And I said to my boss, I was like, hey, hold my phone for a second. And I went over to the guy. It was just like an instinctual thing. I went over, I grabbed around his neck, I hip tossed him onto the ground, did a reverse knee on belly, had his arms behind his back. And he started yelling, "I'm sorry, officer, I'm sorry." He thought I was a cop.
Right.
And I'm holding him down. All I was trying to do was prevent him from running and getting away, because I was like, he might have just killed this guy.
Right.
Or B, hurting anybody else. And within 5 minutes, the cavalry comes running down on horses, all the cops. And being from the DC area, I'm like, I'm going to jail immediately. Like they're going to send me to jail for sure, because I got involved in this. I was kicking myself. I was so pissed off. I was like, I can't believe I got involved in this. Cops came. I had two of them ask me if I could continue to hold this gentleman until they handcuffed him. And then every one of them came by and personally shook my hand and thanked me for addressing this, because they knew like it could have been way worse. And they were appreciative that I didn't violently pound this guy or do anything else. I just took him down and held him, and from handshakes.
Yeah. I don't know what the laws are in DC, but here in California, you affected a private person's arrest. It's perfectly legal. You didn't use excessive force, use enough force necessary to restrain him, and nothing illegal about that. That's awesome. Yeah. I commend you for that. That's awesome. We need more people like that in the world, less of the opposite. Yeah. But yeah, I know what you're saying. A lot of people will just they'll see something like that happen, and they're just like, whatever, it's not my problem. Or the worst part is when they take their phones out and start filming it and just watch it.
Know. My boss was like, man, that was so badass. He's like, why didn't you have me film it? I was like, because in my head at this moment, I'm not thinking like YouTube highlight reel. I just
want to get this guy. Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I wish we had it. I'm not going to lie. I wish we did have this on video.
Right. But, it'd be a cool video, but it'd be
a good instructional to show.
Yeah. There you go. So what's your current BJJ training schedule? How many days a week do you train?
I train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday.
Nice.
So typically 3 to 4 days a week at least. And then the other 2 to 3 days are in the gym, trying to make sure that my body stays in shape enough to continue doing jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
That's the goal now.
It's pretty much identical to what I do. I sometimes I'll throw in a fifth day sometimes if I'm being stupid, and I'll go for a run like a run of weeks for 5 days a week for a while, but then I can tell when I'm doing too much and I have to back off, or else somebody gets sick or something, I'm going to catch a cold, and I just don't want to deal with that. So I actually find that the optimum amount of days is 3 to 4 days of jiu-jitsu and 2 to 3 days of weights, and I'm good.
Depending on how you're training too, because sometimes that, it's like when you take maybe 2 weeks off of jiu-jitsu, sometimes you've been training for a while, you usually feel really good when you do back, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just taking that, you forget that you're really beating the shit out of your body quite hard
Mhm.
throughout the whole week. You know,
Mhm.
we're fighting people, we're sparring a
Mhm.
lot, and I plan on doing we're trying to get a pretty solid competition, you know, group to continue out and start
Mhm.
doing some bigger tournaments this year. So
Nice.
my plan is to compete. I've competed at every single belt level, so it would feel
Mhm.
weird to not do it as a black belt.
Mhm.
And so I plan on doing that, but it is tough. So the recovery, the nutrition, your body. I had a herniated disc in my back years ago from playing off my back for so long. I was getting off the couch, I sneezed
Wow.
just like that, and I couldn't get up. And I was supposed to go to Peru with Sal and my old instructor and Kenny Florian. They were doing this big black belt seminar thing. I couldn't go to that. My doctor was like, you're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu for at least a year, which I was just like, couldn't even handle. So after that, I rehabbed myself, my back, went through, did the right way, and now try to, as much as I can, be as consistent as I can to really keeping, you know, as we get older, like we just have to, really important to train smart. I tell a lot of the guys that are later in their career getting into this, I'm like, if you want to keep doing this, you have to be smart. There's no reason. Some of these guys, you know, like a white belt or a blue belt, I'll be at a school and I'm rolling with them, and they are fighting like this is the ADCC trials
Right.
to get out of it. I'm like, homie, you know, like you're a white belt, I'm a brown belt. This is probably how it's going to go for a while.
Right.
You don't have to try to be a hero. You don't have to like, you know, I usually would just like go. I'm like, I'm not going to have you like kill yourself to just, you know, but that's where that ego, you got to keep that ego in check, because that will mess up your body substantially, you know, and I want to go back and train the next day. I don't, you know, so.
Yeah, you have to tap. I mean, you have to, if you get caught in a bad position, you get caught in a bad position, you know, but I made an observation the other day about overtraining and not overtraining and how you feel, how I personally feel. If I am doing a lot of defensive cycles, like where I'm playing a way more defensive game and I'm, you know, not really being offensive, I know that I'm overtraining. That's when I'm like when I don't have as much energy and I don't feel like really like going at it, I feel like I do more defensively. But then when I actually get the rest I need and I'm doing well, then I have much more offensive cycles. And I'm like, okay, then I'm doing more grip fighting and 2-on-1s, and I'm attacking more, and I'm stringing my submissions together. And so I found that that's a good way to think about it for myself. How I feel is like when I'm being defensive, that means I need to take a break. I need to take a day off and just relax, you know? But yeah, so I'm starting to figure those kind of things out. Like, cause I'm 50. And so like, I feel like I really have to be on top of the recovery thing. It's like, and I don't feel like old or whatever.
Dude, you look great for 50.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I mean, not that that's old. I feel like this is a good, you know,
I don't feel like it's old now. No. And it's like, you know, if you had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, yeah, it's pretty old, you know? But yeah,
50, like, oh, are you dead almost?
Yeah,
like it's great.
exactly.
50 felt like 40s. When I was in my 20s thinking 40s, I was like, oh my God, that's old as shit. Like there's no way.
Yeah.
It's,
I don't feel it.
I like it. No. And this is the age where, you know, when you're 40, you're 50, you've kind of, hopefully at this point, kind of hopped into a little bit of a stride in life. You know, you can buy things, you know, you have money, you got your family. It's just, it's like, I love, you know, the freedom of that. I don't, you know, being broke and young sucks.
It does. Dating and all that crap. It sucks.
Oh my God.
I mean, the whole your whole life just being like, there's nothing certain, you know, everything's a question mark. I don't miss those days. I think about it. I look back at my 20s. I don't miss those days. I mean, there's some things about those days I miss, but a lot of things I don't, you know.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. We got to do it. I think that's where you can have some sense of peace and you know, completion. Like we did it, we had our fun, but now it's time for the next phase, you know.
Right. So here, let me ask you this. So let's say you're trying to develop a new system or you're working on a new skill. Do you prefer what type of special training modality do you prefer? Do you like free rolling, drilling, or situational sparring more to really grasp that concept?
Situational sparring for sure. The format of our classes is different than a lot of other traditional jiu-jitsu schools, where you'll go in and you'll do warm-ups where you're shrimping down the mat and forward rolls and you're doing different, you know, basic movements, which is fine because everybody has to learn those. But our warm up, we are focused on, if we're working the back system,
Mhm.
then you grab a partner and we're working from the back, where it's like sweep or submit for the first, bit. And then we go into the technique and we do one or two techniques. So it's, digestible and it stays in your head,
Mhm.
and then rolling. So I think that's great. I think there's tremendous value in drilling as well with
Mhm.
certain things. I just think you have to be careful about what you're drilling, so that you don't become so rigid in those movements that you're unflexible when things don't go that way.
Right.
It's hard to because jiu-jitsu is so dynamic that you can drill a knee cut pass on the right side, but now they're on the left. So are you proficient on your left? Or there's, like there are
Mhm.
going to be things that switch that aren't as dynamic as two people just doing a drill.
Mhm.
But I think especially in the beginning, when you're first starting, no shame in that. That's a
Mhm.
great thing to do. I don't
Mhm.
think it's obviously any practice through jiu-jitsu, you're never going to master it, but anything that you can do that's practicing that in any format, I think is great, because it keeps it interesting. If you only drilled, or you only did situational training, or
Mhm.
you only did this, it would probably become very boring and get a little monotonous. So I think that having a few different things that you rotate through and incorporate is really
Mhm.
important. And everybody that I know hits a certain milestone or a little roadblock, or whatever you want to call it, at each belt. There's just a point where you kind of go, I feel like I'm not learning anymore. You hit like a little
Right.
plateau.
Right.
And those are always opportunities where I told people to find something interesting, because now, especially with jiu-jitsu, you can type it in any position that you can think of, and YouTube for sure has 20 videos on it. So you
Mhm.
can go through and say, hey, I feel stuck as a blue belt right now. I'm going to keep going through the motions, but I'm going to focus on my triangle game. And I'm going to look
Mhm.
at all these entries into the triangle and finishes, and
Mhm.
let that occupy my space for a little bit. And then when you come out of that, you're a little bit sharper with your triangles. You've gotten past the little lull that you felt of not learning, and you can kind of progress. So
Mhm.
that's like kind of a natural thing. But if I had to pick one, I think the situational sparring makes the most sense,
Mhm.
right? Because people are moving and responding in different ways that are not necessarily so predictable. If I'm drilling with you,
Mhm.
I know if I'm doing like a duck under pass or something, like you're going to lift your leg and I'm going to duck under, or we're
Mhm.
doing,
Mhm.
whatever it is. It's not how it goes, right? It's like
Right.
everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Like
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
so I think the situational drilling helps a lot.
Mhm. Do you, when you do situational drilling, do you, let's say you're working a particular pass and you're doing it off like maybe a half guard pass, and there's a particular technique you're trying to get and it's not working. Do you transition to something different, or do you just reset and try it again?
I think it depends on what the person is doing. I find that with a lot of different body types, you have to get good at conserving energy.
Mhm.
And as you get older and are a higher belt, you're expected to always operate at that belt level. And
Mhm.
so when I go to gyms, even as a 4-star brown belt, there's an expectation, right? There's like a level of proficiency I feel like personally that I need to have and maintain. So I have to be aware of my energy conservation. So I feel like if I get some huge guy, real strong, and I can recognize that maybe he's stronger, bigger, then I'm going to use um, more of these small transitions between their movements to look for openings and
Mhm.
opportunities, instead of
Mhm.
trying to force a, round peg
Right.
in a square hole, or
Right.
square peg in a round hole.
Yeah. Either way, it
Um,
doesn't work.
so yeah, it doesn't work. so with that, the fighting those forces, I mean, you have to decide. There's some positions where settling in and waiting and feeling where you're knowing where your pressure is
Mhm.
that gives you, like, if I know I'm past the hip line, or if I'm in a certain spot, I might not be fully settled in, but I can tell that I can stay here and settle into this position, make my micro adjustments, and to
Mhm.
get to where I need
Mhm.
to be, rather than diverting, completely abandoning that position and shooting for something else.
Mhm.
But understanding fundamentally what position you're in, what your options are, what makes something work. Like what about this person's position or posture has to be created to make an effective pass, or to make a transition to something else.
Mhm.
So I think the more that you recognize that, the more that you can kind of foresee and give yourself a little bit more options, so it doesn't feel like you have to go only this way. That was the passing for a lot of lower belts. That was a consistent theme that I noticed, where a lot of people would just try this one thing, this one route. And then when you get with a seasoned grappler, you're passing to pass their guard. Look at these people in tournaments. It's right, left, spin, north, south, right, left, boom. And then you get the pass. It's you're not, rarely do you see somebody just do a straight, do one little Toriano pass or something. And then
and they pass just like that.
I mean, maybe with a white belt or something, but it's not normal.
No, I mean, you watch like black belt matches and almost the whole match is just trying to make the pass.
Some of those matches are annoying as shit.
Yeah, they are. It's like watching paint dry.
So boring. Some of them.
It's like watching paint dry.
It's oh my God. I remember seeing that when I was younger and just seeing like black belts compete. And I was so excited. I was like, this is going to be awesome. And I'm watching. I'm like, this is boring.
Yeah, that's actually why.
I get it though. You know why they are.
But that's the thing is like for me personally, my personal preference, like if I'm going to watch matches, like if I'm going to decide one night, I'm going to go on YouTube and just watch the match because it'll be fun just to watch film, right? I look for submission only, no point matches because they're more exciting. They don't care about getting past, because there's no points or penalty or anything, and it's just submission. But when you watch like IBBJF rule, guidelines, it's all about stopping a pass, and the whole thing is like majority of the matches are just like who's going to get the first pass and then stall out and get advantage, and then that's the end of it. It's not very exciting.
No, and it's understandable why rules have to be what they are to keep matches going. And especially if you have people that are not grapplers that you're trying to pull into an audience setting, there's a lot of different rule sets that from a straight grappling perspective would make more sense in terms of determining who's a more proficient and elite grappler, but they're not, and then you have tournaments where people are just really good at exploiting the point system. They just know how to score points and stall and get points and, so
but then that's the game though.
It's definitely not exciting.
But that is the game. That is the game.
It's not, they didn't create it. They're just playing it.
And I admit it when I've done tournaments where there's points, and that's when I started winning. When I figured that out, I got to get points. Stop just trying to submit the guy, get points, get position, get points, get up on the board a little bit. Then you can try to submit the guy if you want to, and that's when I started winning matches more, it is the game. But if you're only going to do like fight to win, where I don't think there are any points in fight to win, it's just submission only. So if you're doing that and it's just submission only, then it was just it's a different thing. I mean, I don't think any one is better than the other per se. It's just whatever your personal preference is. I mean, I like watching ADCC matches, and I like the fight to win matches, and I like the submission only and all that. I prefer to watch that.
It's like the scrappier, like no gi purple belts are like more entertaining,
It's fun. It's fun to watch those guys, and the girls too. I mean, they're freaking beasts,
Amazing.
So, but going back to the situational training thing, I was thinking about something like if you had asked me, or if I'd asked myself that question even a couple of weeks ago, I had a very dogmatic answer about what I thought of that. Like I thought, because I used to get on my own case in the past when we would do the type of training, and you try to do the particular technique you're trying to work on, right? But the other guy already knows what you're going to do. He's been doing the same technique too while you were drilling. So he's already got his own idea of how he's going to defend it. And so it makes it difficult for you to actually pull off the technique half the time. And then you end up switching to something else. And so you sort of, in a sense, are like, you're not concentrating on trying to learn the technique you're supposed to be learning. So that could be a negative. And so then for a long time, I would think, you cannot do that no matter what, black and white, it has to only get that technique. If you don't get that one, you got to reset. But now I'm starting to think like, no, maybe you should have like 3 different options. And you base it off what the other guy's doing. I mean, and it's more conceptual, and that actually is more realistic and makes more sense. So I think that's sort of like what you were saying. And I'm starting to change my view on that again, right? I'm trying not to be so dogmatic and not have such a black and white view of it. That there's a lot of grays in it. And I think as long as your jiu-jitsu is successful and accomplishes something positive and offensive, then it's all good. So
absolutely. Yeah, if you're having a good time, I mean, that's going to keep you coming, and and not stopping the training. So I think a variety of that is great, and there are so many resources now, so for people, so it's really great for the sport to see so much out there and it start to gain so much popularity. I always loved the fact that most people don't train jiu-jitsu because it seemed like this superpower that we have that other people don't. So
right.
my son's got friends that I've asked him, like, man, why don't your friends train? Like he coasted through middle school, no issue. I was so worried for him, thinking like, this is kids in middle school, they're assholes. Like, this is the worst time. Totally fine. The confidence that he has is like, he's submitting adults. So it's like, he doesn't, he has like a way higher level of confidence, going through that now. So it's such a great sport for so many people,
It is. I mean, I wish I'd been able to do it in high school. That would have been great. I mean, just the idea of growing up. Are you okay? Did I freeze? I must have froze. Can you hear me?
Did we get stuck? What happened? Oh, there we go. Can you hear
me now? Yeah, I can hear you the whole time. Now you're stopped a little bit. Hold on a second.
Oh,
there you are. Okay, back. Okay,
we had a glitch in the system.
We had a little glitch. I can still hear you the whole time. But no, okay. I wish I've thought about that a couple times. Like, I wish I would have had that in junior high and high school, and and had jiu-jitsu. I did karate. I did Shotokan karate, which it gave me some confidence, and it actually got me out of a scrap or two with the neighborhood bully. I remember one in particular that it really comes to mind whenever I think about that. But I think jiu-jitsu would have been better. I just, looking at, comparing the two, I just think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would have been a way better thing for me to have been able to do at that time. It just wasn't around, wasn't really available. Yeah. Let's see. Do you prefer gi or no gi, or do you like them both the same?
I do like them both. I've gone through phases where I've competed more no gi, and then I've competed gi, and I think I love them both. It's the thing that I don't love is the arthritis that I have in my fingers. I've got these like horrible, fingers that are just, like, I mean, from all the grip fighting for years and years. So that's the only thing that's a little, taxing is the grips, but work on framing and doing things like that. But so I really love the tradition of the gi, and I appreciate the evolution of the no gi.
Nice. Yeah, I like them both too. I do more no gi now though, just by circumstance. But I actually, I prefer, the thing I do prefer about no gi is, like you said, the fingers, the grips. Your fingers don't hurt, and I just feel my body feels better. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the friction from the gi and everything, and it's just like trying to swim through mud sometimes, and it's just the extra energy. But I don't know. I like the no gi.
I love the leg system too.
Yeah,
we do a lot of leg submission training, and so that's another really exciting part of the no gi process.
Yeah,
I love too.
Yeah, there is a lot more of that in no gi, where you have a lot more options with with heel hooks and everything else than you would with gi. When you're what is it, straight ankle and knee bar, and it's about toe hold, and that's about it. Yeah. Well, they did add heel hooks to no gi black belt adults, I guess now in the IBJJ.
There's a few tournaments that have adjusted their rules and allow heel hooks and certain things that I was surprised, to be honest, that they're allowing. That's the only thing when you're doing no gi, you just have to really have confidence in your training partners that nobody's going to be a dick about training and pull a heel hook trying to rip your, I've had people do that before. That I'm like, what are we doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like to crank on something, so it's silliness. So I think that's the trade-off, is you just have to be comfortable with your training partners.
Yeah, no, the people I train right now are awesome with that. I mean, we do a lot of leg stuff because it's mainly no gi, but nobody rips anything and goes crazy. They're all really cool about it. So it's a really good group of people, and it makes a lot of fun. And it took and admittedly it took the fear away from me, because the first 7 years I trained it mainly just gi. I really didn't do any heel hooking or anything, because it just for scheduling reasons. But so when I went into it, I was a little apprehensive about it, a little nervous about it, but then, they were all really cool about it. And now that I also understand it a lot more, the way it works, then that took a lot of the fear away too, where, you just know how to deal with it. You know how to defend it, how about the knee line and everything. So that made it a lot easier to deal with. So in your opinion, if you had to pick three concepts practitioners could focus on to develop an effective guard passing game as quickly as possible, what do you think they would be?
3 concepts of guard passing?
Yeah. What would increase it as fast as possible?
So understanding distance management is really important. Depending on your opponent's posture, if they're supine if they're on their back with their feet up, or if they're off to the side with one knee down. A lot of that is going to change what I'm going to do for guard passing, but a lot of people will, to pass someone's guard, if you're talking about points or you're talking about just even, just rolling, that end position is with both shoulders pinned on the ground, right? It's not good to practice jiu-jitsu halfway where you're not completing the technique. So in my mind, passing the guard's fully passing the guard, right? Past the hip line, I've got shoulders. If the person is not on their back with their shoulder blades on the back, then they're up on their side. And even somebody that's on their side, even if my knees are past their hip line, still have the ability to, to weave in, to to grab guard again. So that chest over chest, coming in, watching your the knee line where your opponent's feet are, because those legs and where they are, the grips on you, so that distance management is all about focusing on that. Are they pulling my lapel? If they have like a collar sleeve grip, that's going to limit my motion, right? So a lot of it is about posture, distance management, and then making sure that, from my perspective, it's staying tight. A lot of people are very loose and kind of back and upright when they're passing, but that allows a lot of space. So I'm more of a person that when I go to pass, once I've gotten, either past that leg line and I'm making contact with the person, it's that danger zone of that outer layer where you're kind of right, on the outskirts of their ability to grab you. It's when I come into pass, I'm trying to make connection with my partner, with my grips, and then make sure that I'm finishing with chest to chest, over top of them, so that even if they're pushing, I can still hold an effective side control position.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm visualizing when you're saying that, like the idea of no light, where you're coming down, you're preventing the underhooks and then getting chest to chest and head and shoulder control, et cetera. Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually good. It's a good way to think about it. Very good way to think about it.
Yeah.
So you're in pretty good shape, Matt. I can tell.
Hey, man,
what's your current strength and conditioning type of routine? And because you said you were trying to keep yourself in one piece, and I think that's the main focus of that for jiu-jitsu. What do you currently do?
So I was actually a personal trainer for years, and then I used to run health clubs. I was a VP of a chain of 17 health clubs in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area before it sold to Golds. And so that was a big part of my background. I found it now that it's boring to go to the gym. I honestly don't enjoy it right now. I'm just being honest. I've started to like it again because I've shifted my perspective about why I'm there. Also, I have a good buddy of mine, Dan, who lives here, who is a Pedro Sauer black belt. Nice. We go to the same gym. So we try to work out together a lot. And a lot of times he'll have like a routine. He's into diving and all this stuff. So he's got these routines and regimen. I'm like, cool, man, I'm just going to come in and just do this stuff with you. Like we'll just go through it. So we have some routine now that's based on strength and short bursts, things that are really geared towards, aspects of jiu-jitsu, but are very functional. So a lot of the things that I do, whether I'm working out with Dan or by myself, are proprioceptive movements, things that are challenging my balance and coordination. It's the difference of standing doing a dumbbell curl on both feet versus standing on one foot and doing it, or standing on a Bosu ball. And that instability that fires a lot of those secondary and stabilizing muscles. That's what I tend to focus on, because it's a lot of those weird positions and postures and movements that we tend to utilize in jiu-jitsu. So I try to emulate those and focus more on just a functional style of workout. I find them to be more entertaining and easier to get through, less monotonous than just sitting. I have a slew of issues. Like two of my toes are broken. They just can't fix toes. So it's, my arthritic fingers, my LCL pops out of my knee quite often. I just have to kind of like click my knee and pop it back in. So I can't do crazy heavy squats and crazy heavy deadlifts and all that. So I really take an approach of trying to focus on mobility. Right. And I should be stretching a lot more. That's like my downfall. But that's really what I focus on, because I'm just, I'm not trying to go in to max out my bench or my squat. I don't care
Right.
about any of that stuff. You know, I just care like, how do I feel? How do I look? You know, how am I able to stay in the best condition to, you know, accentuate my jiu-jitsu. So
Nice.
typically that's what it is. If I can make it in there 2-3 times a week and hit all the muscles, good. You know,
That's
I
sufficient.
overcomplicated it
Yeah.
for a long time.
Right.
And I think people do that too. They really overcomplicate it, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. If you took all the diets and all the workout routines and put them all on a wall and you threw a dart at it, whatever one it hit, if you just stuck with that one for at least, you know, a couple months, you're going to see results, right?
Yeah.
You're changing the normal thing that you're normally doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy enough to kind of cycle through different things and different exercises, but I think the umbrella over all of it is really about mobility and functionality of your, you know, body posture and things like that.
Right. No, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's I'm doing a lot of mobility as well. I mean, I do regular weight training, but I do the mobility first, and then go into the warm up, and then do the main workout, and then, you know, I'll try to use my recovery tactics after and get everything going. But yeah, that sounds awesome. What kind of diet do you follow? Anything in particular?
So I've done a few. Yeah, I've tried every different diet that you can imagine, and I have some sensitivities to lactose and gluten. So I used to be way more extreme with my diet. I found it easier now to stay kind of consistent. I don't fluctuate as much. My weight is pretty consistent. So I don't have anything specific. I did the plant paradox for a while, which Dr. Stephen Gundry, that's all based around lectins and inflammation in your body. And it's fantastic. And it's a huge, it's an amazing book and lifestyle to follow, but it's also very challenging in terms of preparation and having certain foods on hand.
Right.
So I've just tried to limit the crappy food as much as I can. Just be sensible and normal, and not, you know, not drink too often, not eat too many desserts, just kind of stay balanced. I think life, it's like all about life, you know, it's just about having a balance. And that was very tough growing up. And you know, I had eating disorders, and I had all kinds of problems, you know, things like that were challenges growing up with getting eating and diet and working out, everything under wraps. And now I've found like a stride where I can kind of just still enjoy myself and still do what I need to do, but I'm putting in enough work in the gym that you get to a point where you want, you know, if you're working out extensively and training, and then you're eating like shit, you're going to suffer. You're going to feel that versus if you're, you know, eating well and not, you know, overindulging, because you obviously want to eat better when you're working out. It's kind of like they go hand in hand. So right now, yeah, we grill a lot, like a lot of meats, a lot of fishes, eggs, a lot of hemp protein. And that's, you know, I'd say that like occupies the majority of my diet.
Oh, hemp protein. That's interesting. Yeah. So guys, I don't do a lot of protein powders and stuff because I actually have an allergy to whey. And I did drink them for years while I was bodybuilding, but I would get sinus infections all the time from it because I get too congested. So
yeah, the hemp protein's great.
Yeah. Cause I've actually been toying with the idea of creating a meal replacement supplement because of that kind of thing for my own diet and everything, you know, because I have that issue. So I've been, you know, because I really don't do powders because I've tried the plant-based ones and I just don't like them. I don't like the way they taste, and they're gross. And
they're pretty gross.
They're nasty. And they have a lot of like extra stuff in them that I don't really want to consume. I want to find something that's just protein, and then I can formulate into something like a meal replacement for myself.
Sure.
So cool.
Yeah.
When you said eating disorder, was that like bodybuilding based?
No, that was like when I was growing up. I wasn't like a fat kid. I was just like kind of maybe chubby, a little overweight, just not very comfortable in my own skin, and didn't like to take my shirt off and go to the pool with friends and that kind of a thing. And when I got into college, I started working out for the first time. It was like really when I started lifting, and it sort of changed, you know, everything from that point of just going from that mindset and having all these insecurities to building confidence through this. And it was just a process in my life like that I had to go through and get past. But now it's allowed me to have that perspective on what not to do and how to kind of live my life now and stay within a balance and stay to where you're not feeling like you can't eat anything, but also, recognizing that food does play a significant role in our gut health is super important. And so I've tried to keep that in mind as I, with certain supplements and and food that I do intake as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I went through my share of zigzag weight issues and so forth in my life too, but I finally got to a point where I was able to get myself down to a healthy weight and maintain it for several years now, like a decade now. So yeah, I can relate to that. I've been 240 two times in my life, and I've been down to 165 a couple of times in my life, and now I'm just like at 170, and I just sit there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the thing is, it's funny about it is that the bodybuilding is what did it to me in the beginning. That's how initially I got so fat, was through bodybuilding. And the whole thing of like, you got to eat 6 times a day and you got to take in all these calories and all this shit, but they're not telling you how they're doing steroids and growth hormone and all the other crap that they're doing to keep their weight under control, and that the protein is synthesized into the muscle and not doesn't get stored as fat, and all the things that go along with it that they don't talk about, or back then they didn't talk about. And so in a sense, bodybuilding in a sense for me was like a really negative thing. And when I go back and look at it in that regard, really did a number on my health, probably.
Look at these guys that are all professional bodybuilders, Ronnie Coleman and these guys, they're a disaster now.
Oh, Ronnie's destroyed now. I mean, are you seeing that Netflix documentary that they're on?
Oh
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, dude. It's I mean, that I never thought that was gonna, I looked at those people, I'm like, my God, I hope you're making a hell of a lot of money, man. Cause this is like, what a uncomfortable way just to be that large, even in general. Like that just sounds terrible. And the amount of food and all this, that Stephen Gundry book, The Plant Paradox, really opened my eyes to a lot of how we've exacerbated this idea of excessive amounts of protein that are needed to build muscle. And it's not true.
It's not true.
And it's really, it can have really negative effects by putting that much stress on your digestive system of taking in that much, where you're doing like, I was doing at one point, you're doing like 3 grams of protein per pound of body fat, or body weight.
Body weight,
like,
it's huge.
You're doing like 300 grams of protein a day, 350. I mean, it's absurd amounts. So I just, that is a crazy lifestyle, man. That eat, sleep, and train thing.
Well, I do believe too that a lot of that was propagated by the protein powder companies, supplement companies, who controlled the magazines because they were trying to get you to buy their products because they knew you couldn't eat that much protein in one day. I mean, some guys did it, but they were animals. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but that's really how, I think the biggest where it really comes from. And I mean, I personally only eat 2 or 3 times a day, usually just 2. I do fine. I know I don't eat even 1 gram per pound of body weight. I'm, of protein a day, and I'm fine. So I don't believe any of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I think intermittent fasting, I'm a huge proponent of that.
I do that too.
I think doing fasting throughout, like even, doing like a week per year, or doing, like just in my day, I do try to, especially when our kids are in school, even my kids, like nobody really eats breakfast, what I mean? We all just kind of fast until the afternoon and then have our meals then. And that I've also found has really helped my gut and digestion a lot.
Yeah.
Too.
I do that every day.
Do you?
Yeah.
I wish I was more regimented. Like there are days where I wake up and I'm just like, I'm eating breakfast, but for the most part, we're pretty good about it.
Once in a while, like my oldest is really into nutrition, and she really believes in the whole breakfast thing of eating in the morning, which is fine. It's great. I encourage her to do whatever she feels like she needs to do. She always gives me crap about fasting now. And, but if she's home and she's eating in front of me in the morning, which is, once in a while, then I'll get hungry, and sometimes I'll eat breakfast early in the morning, but usually I don't eat until like 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then will have breakfast, but it's, the same foods, but I don't eat them till that point. But yeah, it's been working for me for years. So I'm like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I mean, like whatever.
Saves you some time in the morning too.
It does.
Like having to get up and like make food and then go to the bathroom, and the whole process of all of it. It's like, I found it to be way easier. Just get up and go. And I used to think like, I mean, I'll even days we have our open mat classes on Friday at noon and Saturday at noon. And 99% of the time I'll wake up and go through, and I don't eat even before then. And I just eat when I get done. I feel lighter. I feel better. Like, I mean, as long as I ate the day before and, nothing was too off with
Mhm.
my nutrition, then I'm usually good to go. I think people have started to think that feeling hungry is like this negative thing. And,
Right.
we've put like this, you have to eat all the time and never be full, never feel hungry. And
Mhm.
I think that's not really the way.
I don't think it's realistic. Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, like, I'll eat in the evenings. Like, I eat after between 2 and 10 or so, and I usually eat pretty good sized meals for the meals I do eat. But I train first thing in the morning. I train like 6:30 a.m. So I'm not eating anything. I don't even have a cup of coffee. I just roll out
Yeah.
of bed and rub my eyes and brush my teeth and go train. And it works for me. I mean, the only time I ever eat before training is like if I ever train in the evening, which is once in a while, maybe once a week. Only time I ever do it.
Damn, you're a morning guy, huh?
Yeah, that's what
God
that's
bless
what
you.
that's well. That was the thing that I had to switch academies. I mean, like I said, I was at my first academy for 7 years, and it was right around the corner from my office. And there was an 11 o'clock class, and I trained every day at 11 o'clock. And then the pandemic hit, and then we didn't train at all for a year. And then when they came back, they were only offering evening classes. And with my job, I work a lot of evenings. I work day and night, right? So it's very hard for me to get over there. And I've been working at home because of the pandemic. So it's the other side of the county. And so it took me a while to get over there. It just wasn't working well for my schedule. And I was only training like once a week, when I got back to training. And it was, in as much as it really was a hard decision to make, I ended up switching to a place closer to my house that had morning classes, and I've stayed there since, and I enjoy it. And I do like training first thing in the morning, but that was the only reason I left. That was it. I mean, that was, there was no political based reason or anything like that. It was just, scheduling. So, and I still talk to some people I used to train with at the old place, and I still have my, friends there, and I miss people that I trained with and everybody, but it's just, sometimes life changes and things you have to change with it. So,
No doubt.
but
Absolutely.
no, but that's just the way it is. So in closing, what advice would you give the average hobbyist practitioner for the long haul in BJJ? If you're talking to somebody who's just starting out, what advice would you give them?
Just to be patient, just to enjoy the process. It's easier said than done. It's, there's no way around it. Jiu-jitsu takes a long time, to get to a black belt, just to incorporate it in your life. Once you've accepted that it's going to be a part of your life forever,
Mhm.
I think maybe then it's a little bit easier to digest that concept a little bit more and
Mhm.
and live it than just say it. But there's so much to learn, and I think our egos have a way of getting involved and taking the front seat sometimes, which can add frustration to the process and take away from the process and the journey itself.
Mhm.
And so anybody that's just starting out or getting stuck, my advice is just be patient. Remember why you're doing it, and focus your attention on getting better at jiu-jitsu. No, it's always better to be the lower belt tapping the higher belt. You don't want to be the opposite.
Mhm.
And so sometimes, especially schools that do, that's like the dichotomy of stripes versus no stripes, right? Like you can make an argument for how they're beneficial from a business standpoint to give people recognition in these milestones, because you might be I was a purple belt for like 6 or 7 years, probably, I think.
Mhm.
I've been a brown belt for 6 years. Like
Mhm.
it's almost, it's
Yeah.
stupid. So you can stay in these belts for a long time. And so if you have stripes, sometimes that's good where people can feel like they're progressing, but
Mhm.
it also kind of messes with your mind, because you might see somebody that's like a 3 stripe and you're a 1 stripe and you're beating
Mhm.
them and you're going, well, what's the deal with this? Or how,
Right.
and
Right.
so so with all of it, it's kind of like your jiu-jitsu is your jiu-jitsu. It
Mhm.
is what it is. And when you focus on that and not letting your ego take priority, I think then most people are fine.
Mhm.
It's a hard sport. Like it's
Mhm.
a hard thing mentally and physically, and your time and
Mhm.
everything. So
Mhm.
it's not for everybody. But it can change your life, you know, and it changed mine. And I can't imagine my life without jujitsu. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what that would be like. The people that I've met, the experience I've had, the company, Epic Roll, all these things coming from the baseline, of jujitsu is just, it's amazing. So always tried to encourage it. I'm always, trying to market it to people and trying to get more people into it, because it made such an impact on my life that, I know how much it can do the same for others. So I think if you're just patient and go into it with the right mindset and perspective, then you can be successful.
No, that's excellent advice. Excellent. Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like that too about jiu-jitsu. I feel like it's something I'll never stop doing, and I'm glad I did it. But that's also the thing, is that people who don't do it just don't understand why we love it so much. It just like, it's funny. They just don't get it,
Wow. And I understand that. It's, I get it. You can't get it without doing it. You can see it, but people, they're like, why are you so obsessed with it?
Yeah. What's the big deal? Yeah. I get it. So who's
the
your
closest thing to like a superpower, though? It's such an amazing martial art and thing to learn and to share with people. And you see how the positivity that comes from it, and the community that grows with it. When you're rolling with somebody and you're break your arm or choke you unconscious. I mean, there's a lot of vulnerability. So for two training partners that are, submitting to that level of vulnerability with each other, I think that's where the bond comes from, because you're both in this uncomfortable spot where you realize that you've got this strength and this power, but you're having a respect, and you're still, working with your partners to help each other grow. But on a real level, it's a very intimate process too. So it would make sense that those relationships would go so strong, when you're in that level of a interaction with those people on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And speaking of superpowers, who's your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Oh, Superman. Sweet.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you,
he got me with the flying, man. He got me with the flying.
With the flying?
I was always I always wanted to fly. I mean, I used to say Hulk was my guy, but Superman was the,
So basically, if you could have any superpower, it'd be flying.
I think so. Yeah. I don't want to know people's thoughts. Like I'm too sensitive. I'd be like, they don't like me.
That's awesome. Superman. Well, that's cool. Well, I'll tell you what, I like to draw, and I like comic characters. I like to draw comic characters. So since you gave me the discount code, I will draw you a Superman and I'll send it to you.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
All right. That's easy. And I haven't had that one yet. I haven't had that character yet. So that'll be something new.
Oh, nice.
Getting a lot of Batmans, which I like Batman, but he's my favorite too. But I get a lot of Batmans.
I love Batman, love Spider-Man. I love Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, all those Marvel characters, all the Marvel movies, the Avenger movies are all great.
They make really good films. I just got to say, they make really good films. My youngest daughter and I really enjoy them. We just saw the new Spider-Man last weekend. It was really
so good.
Yeah.
So
for a guy well, for us, it's like, it's even looking back on all the older stuff too, like the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, all this stuff. So it's like bringing back all those memories of watching those old films. It was pretty entertaining.
It was so good. The scene where they're up on the Statue of Liberty is all three of them, and they're talking and they're having like that. That was like one of my favorite parts of the movie. It was so good. And every time I try to like get my kids to watch these older movies that were so impactful in my life, and we'll put it on. And the second like the tigers growling in the beginning credits, and they see the 720p, they see like the resolution of like, what the hell is this? Dad, what are you trying to watch? Like everything we try to introduce them. So many of them, they're like, what is this garbage? Because of course their movies are like amazing, right? Like these Marvel movies, like thousands times better than like the CGI that we had, if you could even call it that.
I mean, some of it wasn't too bad. I mean, like even the Spider-Man, they were pretty good films. I mean, the CGI was decent. It was like, it was somewhat believable. But yeah, I get you're saying the stuff they have out.
Did you go back to like the Back to the Future and like Indiana Jones?
Oh yeah, forget
it. You're going back like into the 80s and stuff, and He-Man movies and all this stuff. I mean, just like it's like it looked like somebody made that on their iPhone compared to what's
going or the old now. Or like Predator, like those Schwarzenegger movies and stuff like that.
Exactly. So I'm like, I appreciate it, but there's the nostalgia because I was a kid,
I mean, I appreciate both. I mean, like even like when I was a kid, I was a big Conan the Barbarian fan, right? And my uncle got me into the novels, and I used to read the comics and everything. And then the Schwarzenegger movie came out, but I actually liked the Jason Momoa version better because it was more like the novels. It was more authentic as far as the appearance and the story and everything. I thought it was a great film, and I was really bummed that they didn't do the second one. I was like, but it's just, I don't know. So I can appreciate both. I mean, I don't know, but so you can be reached at Instagram at Epic Roll BJJ, or your real estate company is at MJ Home Sales, or you
Yep.
have at the One Bottle Company, and you're also on Facebook at Matthew Wahlstrom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what's the best place people want to reach you? Is it the Epic Roll?
Yeah, Epic Roll. The Instagram page is usually where I spend a lot of the time, and so you can DM me on there and follow our pages there. And we have I've got a link tree on that has links to all the other pages as well. So
Sweet. Okay, Matt, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. It was a lot of fun to meet you and to talk to you.
thank you so much, man. It was great to connect with you too. Hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, brother.
Absolutely. You too. Take it easy, man.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye.